I want to start out by thanking Minister Egede for a fantastic speech, definitely giving us a lot to talk about here today. But we also have an excellent group of panelists from a wide variety of backgrounds. And I'm mostly thinking about sort of the final parts of the speech where the minister was talking about how we do mining in a less CO2 emitting way, and at which point we think about the green in this whole process. Is it just the materials that we get out of it that we use for clean tech, but can we also do this business in a greener way? These are very big questions. But I have an excellent panel here today. I have Eldur and Sara that are from the mining business. I have Bent from Greenland's Business Association. And then we have Sweden's perspective from Louise, who is ambassador of Arctic Affairs. And I just want to start out right ahead, just to get some comments from all of you before I open the discussion up to the room. And we have this interesting situation in Greenland where climate change is opening up really the earth here, an area, to rare earth minerals. And at the same time, this is something that we use in combating climate change. And Eldur, maybe you come from the mining business area. What opportunities do you see for mining? Do you just look at this as the extraction of materials that are green, or are there greater opportunities of how we think about the green prospects in this area?
Thank you, Kristrún, and it's good to be with you. My name is Eldur, and I'm the CEO of Amarok Minerals. And just very briefly, Amarok Minerals is one of the largest license holders in southern Greenland. So we own both green metals, nickel, copper, and then gold metals as well. We've been operating here for 8 years. And to this subject, before I was in this industry, I was in geothermal development and oil and gas. And before we maybe step into the kind of into the discussion about what is sustainable or green mining, I want to kind of approach this subject and discuss a little bit what we are faced with today, less from a climate perspective, but more from an energy perspective. In today's world, we have an energy crisis in front of us, which is resulting in massive inflationary pressure in Europe, in UK, in US, and other places. And the only way to tackle that is to have a source of energy, either by using more oil and gas, coal, or these kind of minerals, which supply 90% of energy we need, or go into sourcing energy from other resources, meaning hydro, wind, and so on. And to do that, we need minerals. It's an absolute certainty we need minerals. And we will be faced with this energy shortage, which will have a devastating effect on the world for some time until we have another source of energy. So coming to your question, what does that mean an economical or green mining? How can we have a green mining? And in my view, we are having an effect. Wherever we go as a human being, we do have an effect on the world. So we cannot say anything is completely green. But what we can do as an industry is that we can approach the question about exploitation from a different point of view. You can hear it in the world of exploitation. It sounds, I'm going in, I'm exploiting, I'm taking something out. Versus in Amaroq, what we have made as a strategy is that we are not longer a mining company. We are a resource company. And what we mean by that is that to extract minerals out of the ground, we need energy. We need cooperation with people. And if you think of it in this way, where we would like to be is that we don't want to have what we call in the mining terms a mine life for 10 years, go in, take out. We would like to see the operation we have in a such manner that when we have finished the deposit, finished the metal, we would have then built up infrastructure such as energy, hydropower, wind. We would have built up, for example, forestation work, more vegetation work, anything we can do on site to make actually investment in the society. Because in the end of the mine life, for a company like us, we need to spend a lot of money to leave the place as it is. You never can do that completely. And therefore we say, if we can leave the place in a way that it is prosperous and good and has done as an investment, more like as a resource or a sustainable way, then actually there are value left within the industry, in the community. And that as a combination in this kind of a section I think is a key item to a green mining or sustainable mining.
Yeah, I find this a very interesting backstory. I was sitting in on one of the panels before on mining, and they were talking about the importance of socioeconomic infrastructure. But I wanted to throw the ball over to you, Sara, because you're coming from sort of even though it's a mining company like Eldur, it's more of a legacy company in a way, Fortescue Future Industries, and how you experience your company going through this transition. I mean, this is an area, mining, that's historically been associated with pollution, but now we're focusing on this green transition, what the company is trying to do, and your role in that going forward.
Absolutely. So, hello, Sara Edmonson. I'm the regional head for Europe and the UK and the Nordics for Fortescue Future Industries. And for those of you who don't know Fortescue, because we're just starting our presence in the Arctic region, we are a proud Western Australian company, kind of known for our unique culture and our focus on innovation. We are a major mining company, so we're the 4th largest iron ore producer in the world. And we have a really deep and passionate focus on the, let's say, the energy transition and just climate change in general. In fact, we've got some of the most ambitious targets for heavy industry out there. We have a Scope 1 and 2 target of net zero by 2030. That's 2 decades ahead of anyone else in the industry. And we have set a Scope 3 target for 2040. And anyone who knows the steel manufacturing and also a lot of deep water shipping for iron ore carriers, this is a very ambitious climate target. And I think for us, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with what was said prior. I think that there's extraordinary ways that you can make sure that the benefits that endure after the mine life is complete can be multi-generational. So there can be completely different approaches, and in fact Fortescue kind of prides itself on that very different approach. But there is, of course, the concern of the CO2 footprint. And so I can imagine for Greenland, for example, you're looking at this trade-off of, do we actually expand industry and build the economy, but is that going to come at an increase in emissions? And what Fortescue is doing is we've effectively, allocated 10% of our profits, annual profits, which last year was $1 billion US. We'll have another $1 billion this year, just focusing on creating those zero emissions technologies, but most importantly, the green fuels. One of the issues that we see is that there's a lot of zero-emission technologies for our haul trucks, for our trains, for our ships, that just aren't produced at scale, but the technology is there. But the issue is we don't have the green fuels at scale. We're going to need the sustainable aviation fuels because we have fly-in, fly-out operations. We're going to need green ammonia. We'll need green liquid hydrogen. And so what Fortescue has done is, together with Fortescue Future Industries, it's actually transforming itself from a mining company and mining and infrastructure company to a vertically integrated green energy, green resources company. So quite similar there. And just completely shifting the paradigm on what a resources company is really able to provide. And what's so unique about Greenland and many places in the Arctic is that you have this incredible renewable energy generation potential. So the ability to create those green fuels literally next to the mining operations and facilitate that net zero trajectory is really unique and extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of, I myself am from Iceland, and this is obviously a big part of our culture, the access to hydropower, and this has been, as the minister talked about here before, the emphasis here, 70% of energy now coming from hydro or from renewables and going towards 90%. But I wanted to throw it back to you, Bent, how you see this developing, sort of how it strikes you, what the businesses are saying here, because like they're pointing out, there is this lack of access to green fuel. And at this point, where the mining operations are here in Greenland, there isn't direct access to hydropower. I mean, this is obviously going to take some time. This is a long-term project to get it green, right?
It is. And first of all, yes, I represent the Greenland Business Association's Industrial Committee for Mineral Resources, but besides from that, I'm also the managing director of Lumina Sustainable Materials. We own and operate an anthracite mine in Gangasuswa. So we were granted the permit for this mine back in 2015. It's a calcium feldspar product that we are extracting. And this mineral is quite extraordinary, actually, because there's no CO2 hosted in this mineral. So when you make production with this mineral, there's no CO2 emission of it. Also, one of the great advantages with this product is that it has a lower melting point. So if you use it for e-glass or glass fiber, for instance, this material melts at a lower temperature. So for the producer of various products, this also means that they use less energy for their products, thus also reducing their CO2 emission. So initially, when this project started, the strategy was to provide industrial minerals for various markets around the world. And that is a very competitive business. So everything was designed to have a low-cost production. In 2020, we decided for a new strategy. We decided that we wouldn't just be a mining company providing an industrial mineral. We wanted to be a company that would tailor solutions for the buyers so that when they bought the product from us, they could add it to their production, and then it would automatically add value to their products. Therefore, we changed the name to Lumina Sustainable Materials. And obviously, having the word sustainable in our company name comes with a commitment. So first of all, we have started using a lot of resources in downstream research and development, simply to develop new products. We are looking into CO2-free cement, CO2-free ceramics. As said, used in the fiberglass, it would reduce CO2 by 15%. So we are trying to develop new products. But we also have to look at the upstream technology here. That is, what kind of technology are we using on the mine, in the extraction, and in the production. And it is, as you mentioned, we have had some, our challenge is that we don't have access to water. I know it sounds like a paradox, but of all the places this resource could have been located, there are no possibility for hydropower, at least not in the close area. So right now we have a setup where we are actually trying to brand as a product that would contribute on a more environmentally friendly way, whereas our production is still based on fossil fuel. So that's a huge paradox. Yeah. But it is something that we are looking into now. So not only are we investing in downstream R&D, we're also heavily investing in upstream R&D, simply to find a way to improve the technologies used on site. But it is a long-term project.
It's a long-term project. The mines don't come up green from the first day. But I wanted to sort of tie this all together towards the end here with Louise, because basically from all of our speakers here today, we've heard these grand ideas of changing the sector into a green sector in a way. And it's a big project. But if you think about it, the Arctic and the northern nations have a lot of possibilities in that end because of our access to renewable energy. And I know Sweden has some experience with this, so I wanted to hear a bit from you and for the audience what the Swedish experience is in this regard.
Sure. Thank you, Catherine. Is this on?
Yeah, it's
Okay. Yes. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there is a green industrial revolution taking place in Sweden right now, and it is concentrated in our Arctic region, and it's being led, I would say, by our greatest or our largest mining company, LKAB. And for you who are not familiar with the Swedish Arctic region, this is a region very rich with natural resources. And we have, the bedrock contains about half of the 30 critical raw materials on EU's list. And it has a unique access both to hydro and wind power at a very low cost, even these days at a very low cost. And right now, there are planned private investments in green technology in this region for about $120 billion in the coming 1.5 decade, 2 decades. And it's estimated to create about 20,000 new jobs only in the industry sector alone. And this will, of course, then transform our whole Arctic region. The framework for this transitions taking place is the goal of the government, or the governments, I should say, for a climate neutrality for Sweden in 2045, and also in combination then with EU's Green Deal. It's the heavy industry that is now pioneering this green industrial revolution, which is actually quite amazing, I think. And the governments provide incentives and strategic financial support in infrastructure and R&D and so forth. And one important factor for this to happen and to materialize is that we have a long tradition in Sweden, and maybe especially in the north, of close cooperation between the industry, the government, and academia. And in the north, we have Luleå University of Technology, and they are really on the forefront in helping the companies. And without going into details, because I don't know very much about the mining industry, which my colleagues know here, is to say that the Swedish mining industry has over the years already done a lot to reduce their emissions in the productions. But LKAB, that is Europe's largest iron ore mining company, is now taking the lead to change the whole, the global iron and steel industry. And they also want to be a part of setting new global standards, both for mining and critical minerals, as part of making all their production fossil-free in 2045. And just as two examples, I just want to mention what they're doing. They are testing now fossil-free iron ore extraction, and they're also developing technology to extract critical raw materials from their waste streams. And LKAB is also involved, together with our main steel company, SSAB, in developing this hybrid project. It's my favorite. I don't understand it, and I could not explain it, but it involves hydrogen gas, and it will create a fossil-free value chain from mining to a finished steel product. And it was just in August last year, it was the world's first fossil-free steel product that was produced. And this will, of course, have to be made on a larger scale, but the technique is working, and it's absolutely fascinating. You have to go to north of Sweden and see it for yourself. And Eldur was also talking about a little about this, how I mean, the mining industry and the heavy industry can change also in a positive way a region as we see now in transforming the Swedish Arctic region. So I stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, wow, this is very interesting. Exciting as well. But I know we're running a bit low on time, but I still want to see if I can get a question from the room. I'm sure there's a lot of great minds here. Yeah, go ahead.
So sorry, my voice isn't the best.
Oh, we have a microphone for you. Yeah.
But thank you to all of you. I'm actually Australian, and my question is to Sara. Mining companies in Western Australia have a horrific history of interaction with indigenous people, including the destruction of cultural heritage. And in 2021, Fortescue was found guilty of 2 counts of breaching the Aboriginal Heritage Act in the Pilbara. So should Greenlanders be worried about Fortescue starting operations or considering more expanding operations in the Arctic and Greenland, given the company's poor background of respecting rights of indigenous people?
I certainly think that Greenland's going to have to look at the full legacy and track record of Fortescue. And there are issues that do come up from time to time. I would say that if you look at there are, some horrific examples, I think, of mining industries, not just in Western Australia, but all over the world. But I would say that there's also a lot of best in class now that we can look to. So I think if you look at the entire track record, Fortescue's really set the example globally in terms of engaging with communities. And obviously there's a strong consideration for the Aboriginal and the indigenous peoples. Just as a case in point, the Aboriginal people in Australia represent about 3% of the population, whereas Fortescue employs the total workforce, 10% of our workforce is Aboriginal, so that's 3 times, more than 3 times, the representation that they have in the population. We also have the Billion Opportunities program, which sets very specific procurement targets, because obviously mining companies don't necessarily just need technical services, but they'll need hotels, they need caterers, there's a lot of services and needs within their procurement. And Fortescue has very, very specific targets and has over the last 10 years been able to put roughly $2 billion into Aboriginal businesses, around 150 over this 10-year period. Just ultimately trying to build a much stronger and more resilient economy that's not just based on the mining extraction and the mining operations. So I would just encourage that there be a dialogue around that and a conversation so that we could get to the bottom.
Eldur, I know you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I just, because it's an interesting point. I mean, it's something that, like in mining, we have to go where the minerals are, right? And during the past 30 years, and to your point, it is something that, there are different legislation, there's different governments, there are various different things. And this proves the point about Greenland. This is part of Europe, part of Denmark, part of Scandinavia. We have the standard, the Scandinavian standard that we can build on. We have a fantastic legal system, EA, SAA, taxes, royalties, everything is in place. So we can do this correctly here from the beginning. And yes, there has been a lot of different things that people have to kind of look into. And if this is done correctly, then you have an island that is half the size of Australia. And it's so important that the extraction of minerals is done from here, not only from an environmental point of view, how the salaries are paid and all of those things, but also from a security point of view. Because most of the minerals that we are now sourcing in the world today are coming, for example, from Russia, China, and these other places, and are funneling capital into region which we don't accept. So there is a real opportunity and a dialogue that we can have, all of us, together in a conference like this one, where you can actually make a blueprint for a sustainable green, I don't want to use the word green because we are having effect when you go, sustainable approach to our mining. And that I think is extremely important because you're right, these are things that we have to think of and there are legacy and so on. Here you don't have the same legacy. And that's the opportunity, right?
Wow, that was a great question and a great way to end this because we got this across. There's a lot to think about. I'm sure you could be here all day, but I think the clock is beeping at us right now. So yeah, just thank you to the panel and yeah, have a great day.